This is perfect. Indeed. And hello, everyone who is joining. We're just giving another 10 to 20 seconds so that people keep streaming in, and we'll get started in a bit. Roger, I guess we can get started since we have like 20 people.
Go for it.
All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Solar 101 info session for the, let me just remove this, but our Solar 101 info session for the Maryland Capital Area Co-op. Just making sure that you guys are in the right Zoom room. And yeah, welcome aboard. My name is Sukrit Mishra. I'm the Assistant Regional Program Manager for the DMV region. What that means is I basically support our Program Director, Kimberly Armstrong, in the co-ops that we're running in the region. Unfortunately, she's not here today, but I'm joined by my Director of Co-ops, Roger Horowitz, who will be taking your questions in the chat, and Cindy McCabe, our partner from Montgomery County Green Bank. And she will be giving a mini presentation on the financing segment later down in this presentation. So once again, welcome aboard. So a couple of housekeeping rules, as I'm sure you already know. Your audio is muted for the course of this presentation. However, if you have any questions during the course of this presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we will be taking some breaks in between. So, we will be running by your questions as swiftly as we can. And this webinar is being recorded, so there is no need to take notes, or if you feel like you miss out on anything, no worries at all. We will be sending a follow-up email to all the attendees to the info session tonight, and you will have a link to the recording. And I'm sure Roger will drop it at some point, but you can always reach us at mdteam@solarunitedneighbors.org. And again, you don't have to remember that will be in the chat, and I'll be repeating it through the course of this presentation. And again, before we get started formally, it's broken down into 3 segments. My objective during the course of this presentation is to give you the basics on how solar technology works. What are some terminologies you should be aware of? The second part will have to do with the financing, how you can finance your solar installs and who you can reach out to in the region, and the role that Montgomery County Green Bank is playing in this co-op. And the last part has to do with the co-op itself, the timeline, the expectations, and where you can actually join the group. For starters, here's just a quick 101 on what Solar United Neighbors is all about and what we do. So we are a vendor neutral national 501c3 nonprofit. What that means is, while we do advocate for the benefits of renewable energy and solar energy and work with our external stakeholders and getting to these goals, we try to keep a neutral stance on most topics or what have you. Whether it's election season or outside of it, we maintain a neutral stance. We give you the resources you need, but we do not actively vouch for any of, or we are not impartial towards anyone. And like I said, our mission is made up of 3 points. First one being, we help people go solar, whether that's within our co-ops or outside our co-ops. We will give you all the resources and answer all the questions you need in your endeavor to go solar. Second part is actively canvassing and working towards these goals, both inside and outside the co-op. Thirdly, for folks who have gone solar, just basically working with them and preserving or advocating for their solar rights. And in terms of our national impact, we started out in DC. We are now working across 12 states and Puerto Rico. What that means is it translates to more than 5,000 families that we have served in their endeavor to go solar. That's 57 megawatts, which you don't have to know, but in terms of a number, that's a lot. And that's how many tons of carbon dioxide that we have offset during the course of our operations. In terms of our backstory or how we got started, we got started in, just move this down real quick so that you guys don't get distracted. Just give me 1 second. Perfect. So in terms of how we got started, like I said before, we started off in the district, and this was back in 2007. The person you see here in the picture is Anya Schoolman, who's our founder and the executive director. And that's her son and his friend over here on the left, Diogo and Walter. Back in 2007, not sure if you remember, there was a documentary called The Inconvenient Truth, which went over, the perils and consequences of global warming. They got motivated by this and just said, we got to do something. They did their own research on solar, how one can go about solar, and the people who actually, installers who actually help with this. And they realized how tedious and complicated the process was, at least back then. And that's when they informally started their very first co-op within the district. It was a success. And we basically used that as a blueprint for the operations that we're now doing across the nation. Started off in DC, now in 12 states, and we're continuing to expand our work. What that translates to is more than 6,000 homes that have gone solar, and we have active members across all the states in the country. And like I said, triple faceted, our goals, helping people go solar, whether it's existing solar owners or people who are interested, joining together, whether it's on our social media platforms, listservs, and what have you, basically, answering any questions you have, and preserving and fighting for energy rights. We continue to get pushback from utilities and other stakeholders. We continually engage them on legislative platforms and try to preserve those rights. And yes, the fourth goal is, fighting for equitable energy that is accessible to most working class families across the United States. That is the long-term goal. And like I said today, 3 segments. The first part is very technical, solar technology, basics of solar terminologies. Second part is financing, who you can reach out to. And the third part is specifically the Maryland Capital Area Co-op and how you can join it. All right, let's get started. So in a nutshell, how do panels work? We usually refer to them as PV cells or modules. They're also known as solar photovoltaic cells, but as you can see, it's a mouthful. What they basically do is they're converting or harnessing the sunlight that they receive from the sun and converting that into a usable form of electricity for your household and other appliances. This is what your regular panel looks like. I'm not going to go into the technical details on the mini segments or what these panels are made up of. As you can see here, it's quite a bit. What you do need to know is, in terms of dimensions, a panel measures 3.5 by 5.5 feet long. And when you're working with one panel, it's just one panel. But as I'm sure you have seen this on rooftops when you go, when you walk outside your home, it's usually a bunch of these panels, or what we call a solar array. An array is basically more than one panel that is grouped up on a rooftop or elsewhere. And this is an example of a ground-mounted solar array. And when it comes to racking systems, what you need to know is these panels don't just go on your roof directly. They need some sort of a medium or a racking system. And that's what's being done over here. What you see is an installation crew actively installing these panels on top of a racking system. When it comes to rooftops, most roofs, irrespective of the material, are good fit for solar, whether it's a asphalt shingle roof, whether it's a flat roof. Installers can accommodate most of these systems. The only exception would be slate roofs, which are a tad bit more tricky. Some installers downright decline to work on them. For those who do, they do charge an additional fee. But again, it's on a case-by-case basis, and there's no harm in reaching out to installers if you have one of them. And just as an example, this is an example of a standing metal seam roof. This was an install that we actually had done for one of the co-op members in the district. So just an example that if you do have a flat roof, it can still be accommodated. Now, when we work in the co-op, or most of the leads or queries that we receive from folks such as you, it has to do with rooftop solar. But again, there are instances where due to excessive shade or some other factor, your roof might not be such a good fit for solar. And the alternative in those cases is a ground-mounted system. What you would actually require for that is, substantial or a lot of space around your backyard or somewhere around your home. And there are added costs when it comes to trenching and other operations. But again, if residential solar or rooftop solar is not a feasible option for you, this is an alternative. Inverters. This is another component of the whole solar system. So what happens is once those panels receive the sunlight, it doesn't just go directly into your household for your use. What happens is these panels receive it in the form of what we call DC or direct current, and it goes through these inverters. And what the inverters basically do is they're converting this energy from DC to AC, or direct current to alternating current. Again, you don't have to actually know all this technical stuff. The installers will walk you through this, but this is just something for your reference. When you receive a solar proposal or what have you from installers, you might have an option of microinverters, where these microinverters are embedded under each of these modules or panels. And they're basically enhancing the energy that these panels are producing in the event that some of the other panels are underperforming, versus a string inverter, which serves the whole system. But again, it depends on your customization, your system, and some other factors. The installer will walk you through this. Electric panel. This is a second component of the solar system. And what I usually say, or what I've seen in my experience throughout these co-ops, is most panels are decent, they're solid, they're able to carry the bulk of the load during the solar operations. There's no change needed. But there are some exceptions, such as if your panels are older than the year 1970 or 1975, they might need some changing. What happens is that the installer will survey your property and your panel box, and they'll let you know if it's a good fit for solar. If not, you can get it changed by an electrician or someone referenced by the installer. And again, this is a simple connection in the panel. The installer can help out with this. In terms of terminologies, there's just a couple of terms that you should be well versed with before you receive your proposal or talk to installers. The first one is kilowatts, which are also abbreviated as kW, and kilowatt hours. Now, kilowatts, they basically measure your system's capacity, or what it can hold. It's usually abbreviated as kW. And as an example, what you see here is a solar array, and each of these have a fixed capacity. Now, I'm sure the numbers are here, but assuming each of these are 350 watt panels, if you multiply it by the number of panels over here, these are 12 panels, an array of 12 panels, that gives you a system size of 4.2 kilowatts or 4,200 watts. That's your system size. Now, what it produces will differ from home to home, depending on the wide amount of factors such as sunshine and other factors. And that's what's measured in kilowatt hours. That's the term that you'll see on your utility or monthly electricity bills. And again, it varies from household to household. The best analogy I can come up with is, when you buy a car, it might have multiple cylinders in terms of its engine capacity, but it's measured by its horsepower. And that's similar to this. You might have a varying amount of panels, but it ultimately comes down to the capacity that it's carrying. And again, if you have any questions about this, you can reach out to us, to our Go Solar team, and we'll give you some resources. But this is something the installer will also give you or explain in your proposal. So having covered all that, this is what it looks like on a diagram. How the solar process works throughout the whole system is it's broken down into 4 segments. And let me see if I can move this, but no worries. I can walk you through this, but what happens is, first of all, panels, they're receiving that sunlight. That's the first step. And what happens is they're receiving it in the form of DC or direct current. And what happens then is that electricity or energy goes through your inverter, where the conversion takes place. And it's converted from DC to AC. Once that conversion takes place, it then goes through your electric panel, which I also call the power conditioning device. And what happens is depending on your needs across the household, it distributes that energy or electricity in the most efficient way possible. And the last component of this has to do with what we call net metering, or what is mentioned over here as a utility meter. Not sure if you've heard of this before, but during this peak sun hours or peak summer hours, there will be instances where you will not be at home, or your consumption might not be so high. What happens then is when those panels are converting that electricity, any excess electricity that the system produces, it does not go to waste. It's sent back to the grid. And that's where the fundamentals or that concept of net metering comes in. For any excess electricity that your system produces, you're given virtual credits on your utility bills for this. So, after sunset where your system's not producing as much, that's when those excess credits kick in and they're compensating for that shortfall. What I'm trying to say in a lot of words is it's basically offsetting a significant chunk of your electricity bill, even when your panels are not as active. And I should have gone to this slide, but again, that's what it's saying. Excess energy sent back to the grid. You're receiving credits on a 1-to-1 ratio on your utility bills. And that's an added bonus on top of the fact that the panels are already offsetting a significant chunk of your utility or electricity bills. So when it comes to rooftops and what makes a good fit for solar, there are three factors, generally speaking. The first one is the orientation of your roof. When an installer receives applications or when they're evaluating your roof for solar, the first one is orientation, where they look most ideally for any roof face that's facing the southern direction. That's the most ideal or optimal direction in terms of solar production. Any roof that faces the eastern or western direction is still a solid fit. It's still fine. The only exception over here would be any roof that faces the north or northeastern direction. Not such a good fit for solar. And that's the only exception. If you feel like you're not sure as to whether your roof is a good fit over here, our Go Solar team actually evaluates roofs at no cost to you, whether you're applying for the co-op or working to Go Solar outside the co-op and you need a second opinion, you can always send it our way. Second factor, installers ideally look for little to no shading. Again, this is on a case-by-case basis. They're ideally looking during those peak sun hours between 9 and 4 p.m. where your roof is receiving as much sunshine as possible. And again, if you feel like you're uncertain about this or have too many trees around you and you're not sure, we're happy to take a look. Lastly, sufficient space to mount those panels. In terms of a magic number, installers ideally look for 200 square feet, at least 200 square feet of open roof space. What that means is minimal disruptions in the form of dormers or any other mini structures. It's fine to have that, but as long as you have enough roof space for solar, you should be fine. And an alternative to rooftop solar or ground mounted solar is community solar, which is a pretty big concept in Maryland. What happens is if your roof is not such a good fit, we often redirect folks to community solar programs in Maryland. And what that means is you're basically leasing or renting panels in a field or some open space that is run by a utility. You're paying for a system size or leasing it at a fixed rate every month, a specific system size. Any energy that system produces, you're getting those credits on your utility bills from the local utility. And it's the same benefits of solar. While it's not on your rooftop, you're still redeeming the benefits of solar, albeit through the community solar program. Now, if you want to find the next slide, it goes into the fundamentals of community solar. But again, you subscribe to a specific project, the utility or the developer looks at your needs, your monthly bills. Based on that, they will give you a recommendation on what program is best for you, the system size you should subscribe to, or what based on your preferences. And once that electricity is exported to the grid, you're getting credits for that. And if you're looking for community solar programs in your region, we actually have an FAQ around this. It's on this link. But again, if you need a second opinion, you can reach out to our Go Solar team, and we can send you in the right direction. And this is the final component of the solar systems, batteries or backup systems. This is something that is more recent of an addition, but in the event that the power goes out or the utility grid goes down, there used to be a misconception that that's where the panels kick in. That's not quite the case, simply because as a safety mechanism, if there is a widespread outage, the panels also shut down, because we don't want to send any excess electricity or we don't want to export any excess electricity back to the grid, as there will be folks who are actually working on that grid. So as a safety mechanism, your solar system is also shut down. And that's where the batteries come in. If you know that you suffer from frequent utility outages, or you have emergency backup equipment or medical equipment within the household that can never go offline, a battery backup would be a good option for that. And again, when you work with an installer during the customization phase, or when they're working on your proposal, they'll ask you for a copy of your electric bill, but you can also let them know that, these are my energy requirements. I need a battery backup, and they will size the system accordingly. So as I said, if you know that you live in an isolated region with a host of issues, or you have medical equipment or what have you, it's a good fit. But in my experience, at least in DC and neighboring regions, we have not had too many people who have actually subscribed to this option. But again, it's ultimately up to you and what your requirements are. And this is just an example of someone who, as a part of our co-op, actually opted for a battery backup. It was a 13.5 kilowatt hour battery bank. And this is how much it was supplying on a day-to-day basis. And for their appliances, when the power was out, they had it interconnected to the basic appliances. You don't want the battery, pumping power to everything across your household, because it's not going to last long. So in their case, it was a refrigerator, microwave, some outlets or lights, the bare basics, just to keep the household running until the grid came back online. What they chose not to power, for obvious reasons, would be the stove, dryer, and anything else that was more heavy in terms of energy consumption. And if you have more questions about battery backups or storage options, we do have an FAQ on this link over here. We will drop it in the chat, but again, if you need it, you can always reference our website. So in 2018, or I think it was 2019, we integrated another addition to our co-ops. Not only do we have the panels, we also have the EV charger option. And what that means is you can charge your EVs and have those chargers interconnected to the panels. And you'll not be paying anything for those charging procedures, or whenever your EV is being charged. In terms of the average cost, from what we have seen, the unit itself, ranges anywhere from $500 to $700, depending on the brand and who you buy this unit from. It can be in excess of this or something below this. But again, you can do your own research and find whichever brand works best for you. So in terms of the installation procedure itself, it could be a wall-mounted charger or pedestal-mounted charger, depending on some other requirements around your household. The cost ranges anywhere from $500 to in excess of $2,000. But again, it depends on the complexity of your system. So, there are two types of chargers. The basic one is a level 1 charger, which requires a standard 120-volt outlet, which you can find anywhere in your household. While that's the upside, the downside is, for obvious reasons, much slower charging times. It's, on average, it provides a charge of 4 to 6 miles of charge per hour. So it's going to take a long time to get it fully charged. As compared to the more modern or state-of-the-art level 2 chargers, they require a 240-volt outlet, which is usually installed by a professional electrician. Charging time, obviously, significantly higher, charging at pace, at rates 5 to 6 times faster than the level 1. Generally speaking, these chargers have a warranty of 3 years, and then there's a workmanship warranty associated with this, depending on whoever is working on installing this. And depending on where you reside or whichever region you're in, there are incentives around this, but again, it would vary from county to county. And I do believe it did, some of the grants or what have you did change since the last time we ran this. So we would recommend doing your own research and reading up on our FAQ on our website. We have more information on this. So in terms of frequently asked questions on the technical aspects of solar and more related stuff, when it comes to warranties, the panels have a standard warranty of 25 years. In the last couple of years or so, more installers are giving the 30-year warranty, which usually comes with the Solar Insure package. But again, it depends on your budget and some other factors. But most installers offer the 25-year warranty. And I believe the inverters have a warranty that ranges anywhere from 10 to 25 years, but depends on the brand, the type, and other scope. When it comes to owner's insurance, there used to be a misconception that, when you install a system, it makes it more complicated, which means it makes it more pricier, which is not quite the case. We recommend that whoever you work with, do your research, reach out to as many folks as possible, and it in fact enhances the value of your home when you install those systems. So it's more of an adder than um, a downside to your home. When it comes to maintenance and these solar systems, the best part of solar is once the installation is done, it's sitting there for 25 plus years, doing the bulk of the job, offsetting your electricity bills, and minimal maintenance is required. In the instances that there might be some maintenance issues, your warranty should cover this, and you should reach out to the installer to help out with this. You do not have to actually go up there and sort out anything by yourself. In terms of the longevity of these systems, panels, like I said, standard lifetime or lifespan of 25 years. Some of them go longer, and they have minimal degradation during that lifetime. And in terms of the HOA allowing solar on your home, again, there's no one answer to this, but HOAs technically cannot forbid you from installing these panels, unless, of course, it's actually written in their statutes or their in their laws. So if it's already there in writing, then that's a difficult endeavor. But if a lot of HOAs, if you walk them through the process and you brief them on on the benefits of it, there shouldn't be as much resistance. Lastly, historic districts, which are a common feature in DC and neighboring regions. If you know you live in a historic district, you can just let the installer know. They will work on customizing the system or installing it in a way that it adheres or follows the local regulations and rules. So you can still get it done, albeit the way the installer customizes it will be more complicated, but it can be done. Before I go into the solar economics, can take a quick break. Roger, any questions or?
Yeah, I think I answered a bunch of them, but I wanted, there was a question about income requirements, both for community solar and for going solar. So I wanted to turn it over to Cindy to talk a little bit about her program now, before we get started on the rest of things.
Sure, thanks, Roger. Thanks, Sucrit. That was great. Welcome, everyone. I'm Cindy McCabe with the Montgomery County Green Bank, and some of you may have noticed that the sign-up page for the co-op lists an income requirement. Just to let you know, that is not a requirement to sign up for the co-op at all. Basically, if you live in Montgomery County and you happen to have total yearly household income of $97,500 a year or less, you can check that box, and that will let the solar installer know that you qualify for some additional options, which I'm about to introduce in a bit after the break.
Great, thanks, Cindy. Then, and everyone, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Roger Horwitz. I'm based in Washington, DC. I'm a solar homeowner as well. I'm the person working on the chat. I'll turn it back over to Sucrit, and then Cindy will, I think, present right after this section again.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll just go over some of the economics and then I'll loop in Cindy again. So getting started on the second part. So, since residential solar was brought into the market, it's evolved a great deal in the past decade or so. The costs have gone down almost 3 times over the past decade or so. It's no longer a niche project or what have you. It has become more price competitive compared to your standard options in the market. What also helps is that there is a 26% ITC or tax credit, or what they call investment tax credits, on your solar installations. What that means is if you're getting the installation done this year, when you apply for or when you file your tax returns or pay your taxes next year in the next fiscal year, you can offset those taxes by 26%. Whatever the cost of your system is, you apply 26% on that. So it's 26% this year, but it is dropping down to 22% next year, and it'll be gone completely by the year 2024 and onwards. So in terms of breaking down the cost of solar, you do not have to be overwhelmed by these curves and what have you. What we're basically trying to see over here is a significant chunk of the costs of operating or for installers, or significant chunk of these solar costs are soft costs. So it has to do with marketing, outreach, and all that other stuff, permitting and what have you. And that's one of the benefits of our co-op. We're actually doing the bulk of the work for the installer by bringing people together into the co-op and helping them forego those costs. And you know, as I said, soft costs are a significant chunk, and that's what the co-ops hope to address. And like I said, ITCs, or federal tax credits, are at 26% this year. They'll still be around next year at 22%, and then they'll be phased out completely from 2024 onwards. So if you know with complete certainty that you're gonna get it done, so there's no better time than now, either within the co-op or outside, but this would be the most optimal year for this. So in terms of pricing, this is just an example that we came up with, and it's a lot of numbers. So what I'm going to walk you through one of these columns, and what we're going to do is use a 4 kilowatt system as an example. So as how I use the terminologies back then, kW, kilowatts, that's the capacity. Assuming this is a system size of 4 kilowatts, we're using an average co-op pricing of $2.70 a watt. And again, this is not a fixed price. This is something we calculated or came up with based on our pricings from in recent years in the region. Assuming it's a 4 kilowatt system, if you multiply this by the system, you're getting a cost of $10,800. And if you apply an ITC, or tax credit, of 26% on this, 26% on $10,800 gives you this number, $2,800, and that can be deducted from your system costs. And then there's also an energy grant, which everyone can apply for. That's fixed at $1,000. That gives you a net cost of around $7,000 for a 4 kilowatt system. And then what's been introduced recently is what we call SRECs, or solar renewable energy credits. The best way to explain this is it's a production incentive. And what's happened is, in the DMV region and beyond, a lot of the local governments have come up with what we call an RPS, or renewable portfolio standard. What that means is they have minimum requirements for the utilities to produce they set minimum expectations in terms of how much energy has to be produced or sourced from renewables for utilities. Now, if they can't meet that quota, they either pay an ACP, or alternative compliance fee, or like a penalty. And that's what feeds this market. This is a production incentive for your system. So every time your system produces 1,000 kilowatt hours or 1 megawatt hour, you get one of these credits. For an average system size of 4 kilowatts, again, it varies from system to system, but that's going to produce around 5 SRECs, or 5 credits a year. If you go online and look at the open market right now, one of those SRECs are priced at around $59 as of this morning. And that's where we get this number from. We are trying to be conservative, so we calculated it at $50 a piece, which gives us $250. So you deduct that from this net cost, and then accounting for the fact that the rates provided by the utility are increasing at around 2% each year, which is like the escalator. Over 25 years, that's how much you're actually saving by going solar. And that gives you a net profit of around $14,000 over the system's lifetime of 25 years. But again, this varies from house to house, depends on whether you're into the SREC market or not, or some other factors. So this is just an example. And these are some of the financing options. And Cindy, I'll let you have you can take the lead over here.
All right, thank you, Sukrit. You pretty much already did my job for me, so I don't have too much to say. There are loans available, so most of the options, if not all of them, have no money out of pocket. So just remember that. If you remember anything about the financing, is that no money to start, right? If you want to pay for your solar system in cash, you can. If you want to get financing for it, you can. There are ways to rent your solar system with a power purchase agreement. You might be concerned if you don't have taxable income to get the federal tax credit, no problem, right? Sucreet's just pointing out the grant at the bottom, the Maryland Clean Energy Rebate, that's according to availability. So I actually don't calculate that, but it is available. There's just sometimes a wait list.
All right, excellent. And apologies, Cindy, if I covered too much of your stuff, but
No,
it's
no
also,
problem.
it's so intertwined. But yeah, I mean, like I said, and as Cindy pointed out, if you're still hesitant or if you don't know if you're eligible, just reach out to us, whether you're a co-op member or not, and I'll refer you straight to Cindy or any other stakeholder. And let's see. And like Cindy said, tons of options out there. You can go, you can opt for one of these options through the installer. They have either their partners or they can guide you in the right direction, or you can opt for an equity line of credit, refinance, and include a solar option. There are wide factors out there, but again, we are not financial experts. There are folks out there, and we would recommend you reach out to them for more information on this.
Said that Joseph has his hand up.
Go for it.
So Joseph, let me unmute you for a second. And then, okay, Joseph. If you want to unmute yourself, just give you that access. Maybe that was an accident. Okay, well then we can, Cindy, we can turn it back over to you. Do you want to share some slides?
Yes, just very briefly, if
Yeah.
that's okay. Some
Yeah,
folks are a little more visual.
Go for it.
I think you've got to stop yours.
I need to stop. Okay, I'll stop it just about now. Okay, perfect.
Much. All right, just quickly, we've got our new program called Access Solar. If you don't know what a green bank is, basically we are more of a fund for environmental projects than a bank. We are an independent 501c3, but we were founded by the county. And I can send all these out later so you can go over them in more detail, but just briefly, for Montgomery County homeowners that are in single family homes or townhouses and earn 97.5 or less total household income per year. If you want to choose to say that on your sign up form, you can. And there are two options to finance the solar system. As I said, no money up front, which is great. You can own your solar system or rent your solar system. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. Sucreet already went over a lot of this, but the federal tax credit is 26% for any solar system that might have been finished up this year, but started last year, and anything that started before the end of the year, that goes to the system owner. If you are the owner of your solar system and you think you have enough taxable income, and you can check with your accountant if you're not sure, you would be able to check that off on your taxes next year. And solar renewable energy credits, we already went over, those go to the system owner. And the reason I'm saying system owner is because if you want to sort of bypass those incentives and get a lower rate for your solar energy, you can rent your solar system. In either case, whether you're the owner or the renter of the solar system, you do get net metering credits, as Sucreet was mentioning. So I won't go into this too much. I think you already covered it, Sucreet, but SRECs are solar renewable energy certificates that you get. And as an owner of a solar system, you can choose to sell them as your system generates power or through an upfront offer, which is what the Green Bank offers. So here's a quick breakdown. The blue bar is the most important. It shows what you would save if you didn't use an upfront SREC offer versus if you did. So basically, it saves you around the amount of the SREC subsidy that we offer gives you the money upfront. So you don't have to wait for your solar system to generate those credits. And it comes out to be about 10% on average of the cost of the solar system. That's just dropped down upfront. The part at the bottom is my favorite. We're all here to save the environment, to help the environment, or at least I am. And so this example solar system saves an annual equivalent of 8.5 metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions saved, 9,500 pounds of coal not burned, or more than 1 million smartphones charged. I like that one. And then if you want to talk a little bit about, well, in the rental that I'm talking about, where you don't own your solar system, how do the savings work? So this chart here, if you think about the green and the yellow bars together, the whole bar is not split up, that's what you're paying on average to the utility. So this is where you are now, right? If you decide to use a power purchase agreement or a PPA, and these are available with different installers as well, especially the installer that has the capital area co-op, then you would only be paying the yellow part. So that green is the difference. That's your savings. And that's using a utility rate escalator of 2.9% and a PPA rate with a 1% escalator. We can't predict the future, but we use the US Energy Information Administration's website to give their best guess of how utility rates will go up. And also there are PPA rates with no escalator available. So just talk to your installer about that. That's it. Thank you so much. I'll put my contact information in the chat and I'll pass it back to you, Sukhpreet.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And let's see.
Sukhpreet, while I'm here, I wanted to answer one question. Mary
Go for
Jo said that she pays 9 cents per kilowatt hour. So I assume you are in, I think in Frederick area where power is a little bit cheaper than it is in the area closer to DC. So she want to know how that translates into savings. So that will mean less savings because it's a slightly lower electric rate. On the other hand, oh, you're in Montgomery County. Okay. Well, anyway, it totally depends. The lower your electric rate, the less money you're going to save. Because you're paying less for electricity. On the other hand, like that, the sample number in there was 270 per watt. So for a 4,000 watt system, or a 4 kilowatt system, it's 4,000 times $2.70. And I can really good pricing. So the actual cost is much lower, and we never know until the bids come in. We never know exactly what they're going to be, but if you join the co-op, you can get those numbers, and then the installer will look at how much you pay for electricity, and then they'll give you a personalized table of how much money you'll save over 25 years, etc. Okay, I have one more question. I'm going to read this to you, Sukhpreet, so you can answer it. Emily said, we're considering renting within the next several years, but want to install solar because of green energy, but is reluctant to buy up front because, right, if you're renting, obviously you are not realizing those same savings. So she's interested in learning about leasing.
Gotcha. I mean, that's one of the downsides of renting. Like she cannot redeem those tax credits or any of the aspects that the system is producing. I'm guessing that's going to go to the property owner and what have you. And Roger, what did you say on the second one? What is she looking for then?
Oh yeah, well, I can help answer that as well.
Sure.
I mean, it totally depends. I mean, one of the problems with putting solar on a rental property is that you are not realizing those savings if the people who are renting the house are realizing the savings. So then it's a question of, right, are you going to increase the rent, or are you going to have utilities be included because you're saving on utilities? But right, I mean, if you own the system, you can obviously still qualify for the tax credit yourself.
Right.
And then when you talk with the installer for the co-op, right, you can ask about the different options. And also Cindy just talked about the different options for leasing as well, for doing a PPA.
Gotcha.
And then Cindy, you included info there. That great. So yeah, and I'll make sure to share Cindy's info as well, because I know you need to hop off. Okay. And then I'll turn it back over to Sukhpreet, and then I'll answer questions in the chat, and then join back at the end of the section. Thanks,
Perfect.
Cindy.
Perfect. And also, like, whatever Cindy presented and what have you, yeah, as Roger said, if you want to reach out to her, there is a contact info there. If you miss out on that, no worries. Just reach out to MD team at Solar United and we'll get you in touch with her. So that's Perfect. And this is the last segment of the presentation. We have gone over the technical stuff, financing, and I'm sure a lot of you have questions around the co-op. I can't read the chat right now because I know it's really interactive, but I hope this segment covers most of your questions. And so why join a solar co-op versus going solar on your own? The best way to explain this co-op model is we call it a bulk purchase, or what I call the Costco model. When you go to Costco or what have you, you usually buy stuff in bulk, which is offered at a greater discount, or it's more financially viable. And that's how the co-ops work. Depending on the size of the co-op and what have you, we're saving the installer on the soft costs, marketing and outreach efforts. Once we have enough people, then we invite installers to bid on the co-op. And that's how they offer that discounted rate as compared to going solar on your own with that installer outside the group. And another benefit of the co-op besides the economical pricing is before the installer is selected, after the installer is selected, during the installation process, and right after, you'll have the support of our team all throughout the co-op process and beyond. If you have any questions about anything to do with your proposal or any other components to do with solar, we'll be happy to answer it for you at no added cost to you. The only place where you'll have to fork out money is with the installer when you're paying for that system. And I'm sure Roger answered this in the chat, or I'm sure some questions came up about this, that is there any application cost or what have you? There isn't. Once we give you the link, you can apply to join the co-op. If it's a good fit for solar, we'll approve your roof. No cost to join the co-op. And if you're not happy with the proposals or the rates provided by the installer, you can always leave the co-op before signing the contract with the installer. No sign-up fees, no exit fees. That's another benefit of the co-op. And this is what the process looks like. It's on average, it's anywhere from 6 to 8 months. Let's take this co-op, for example, that we're doing right now in Montgomery County, Frederick and Prince George's. We launched it on April 1st last month. And we also issued an RFP the same date, which means we invited installers to bid on the co-op. So far, I believe we have 60 to 65 people in the group. And we had the selection committee or selection process a couple of weeks ago, and the members selected SES. So what the process looks like is step 1 is where you attend an info session such as this one. If you like the process, if you like the idea of a co-op, we'll give you the link. You can join the co-op. And once you're on board, if you know neighbors or friends who are interested, you can spread the word. And once we have enough people, we'll issue the RFP, do the selection, and that's where we are with this co-op. That's usually in month 3, but given the size of this co-op and how big it usually gets, we decided to speed it up, and we selected SES a couple of weeks ago. And what happens next is SES will be actively working with each co-op member in this group and preparing consultations or customized proposals for them. That proposal will be based on the roof size, their average electricity bill, what their budget is, and what their goals are. Some people like to go conservative with a small system, which covers 30 to 40% or even like 20% of their electricity bills. Some people know exactly what they want, and they want to offset all their electricity bills, and they go for a larger system of in excess of, say, 10 kilowatts or so. So it just depends on what your preferences are. Even though we selected an installer for this group, there's still time to join. So if you're still not decided, that's totally fine. That's where, that's in the third part of this co-op process. But the last date to join this co-op is August 31st. And once we pass that date, we close the co-op to new members or the public. And that's how many people SES works with in terms of getting them a proposal. And that proposal or that customized proposal is, it's not for an indefinite period. Based on market forces and all that stuff, that customized pricing is for an exclusive period of time just for the co-op members. If you like the proposal or what have you, you have 30 days to sign it. If you don't like it, then you can always exit the co-op or ask for more time, but just keep us in the loop. And if you get to this step, the 6th or 7th step where you're happy, you sign the contract, usually the permitting and all that backend stuff for the installer takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months. The installation itself takes between 1 to 2 business days, and it's a pretty fast and swift process. And yeah, I mean, at the end of these co-ops, with COVID going away, we usually have a get together. So fingers crossed, if things stay the same way, we might have another celebration party later this year, towards the end of the year. And again, I mean, it's a lot of stuff on the timeline. So if you have questions about the co-op, you can always reach out to us after this presentation. So what's next? There are 2 co-ops going on right now. The Capital Area Co-op, which serves Montgomery, Frederick, and Prince George's County. We have selected an installer. We have, like I said, 60 or 65 people in the group so far. As of this morning, SCS has reached out to 27 of them and given them a proposal. So it remains to be seen how many people sign a contract, but they're moving pretty fast through this group. You can join this group till the end of August, so no pressure, but this is the QR code. If you're not a big fan of that, this is the website, and I'll be sending this to you right after the presentation as well. And there's another one that's going on right now that's still in the first phase. That's the Anne Arundel and Eastern Shore Co-op. So if you live there or you know someone who lives there, you can share the word around that co-op, or they can, visit our website and find it there. That's still, it's still a relatively small group, so we're still growing it to at least 30 or 35 members before we will invite installers to bid on it. I'm assuming that's going to happen in July or August, but we are still figuring out the dates for that. And well, that's on behalf of Kimberly, but it was a pleasure having you. I know you guys have better stuff to do on a Thursday evening, but thank you so much for joining us. And I kept dropping this name, but this is where you can reach us, mdteam@solarunitedneighbors.org, if you have any other questions. And thanks again. And Roger, thanks so much for handling the chat. Do you have any final questions or comments?
No, of course. Thanks, everyone. Feel free to hop off. If you're done, if you have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I think I got to everything. I may have missed some. We had some questions about EV chargers. So I got an EV this year, so I was just going to talk a little bit about that.
Go for it.
Which is the EV chargers are great. I love my Nissan Leaf. I love my EV charger in my garage. You don't save that much money by installing it as part of the co-op. So I would say if you don't have any plans to get an EV, it generally doesn't really make sense to get an EV charger installed right now. On the other hand, what might make sense is, let's say that you're putting your inverter, which is part of the system, in your garage already. Usually just to get an electrician to come out and work on a project, it might be a couple $100. So maybe if you're not going to put in an EV charger this year, but you think, oh, in the future, you probably will, is you could have them, while they're in your garage, put in a 240 volt outlet from your electrical panel. So that way, when you buy an EV charger, you can just buy one that you could plug directly in there. So then there wouldn't be any install costs when you do go ahead with an EV charger. Because there are the 2 types of chargers. You can get ones that electricians need to hardwire in, or you can get ones that you just plug in. I generally prefer the ones that you can plug in, because that way the electrician just needs to put in the outlet, and when it comes time to get the charger, you can just put it in yourself. Also, that way, if the charger happens to break, they usually have a 3-year warranty. But let's say it breaks in year 4, that way you can just unplug it and buy another one. You don't need the electrician to come out and work on that. I don't see any other questions in the chat, but yeah, contact us at mdteam@solarunitedneighbors.org, and Sucrit and I can help with that. And then Sucrit, any last thoughts?
Just one additional thought to add to what you said about EVs. Like you said, I mean, it's not the cost component that makes it so attractive, but there's also the added convenience. If you know you want to add an EV charger and integrate it to your solar system, rather than going to a third party or someone outside the co-op, just get it done right now. But again, it is a big decision, so we'll leave it up to you at the end of the day. But yeah, that's all on my end.
All right, great. Thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Sucrit. Have a good night.
Yep, goodbye.